Hello, welcome to AWS Summit Online. My name is Anshul Sharma. I'm a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. Thank you for joining us today. So in this particular session, we will talk about communication patterns for microservices and how you can implement them at scale with AWS. So when you talk about software architectures, two aspects are very important. First is divide and conquer, and second is loose coupling. In particular, loose and not lousy coupling. I'll talk a bit more about what do I mean by that. So when you're dealing with microservices, you're already applying divide and conquer. But a good way to apply loose coupling is using asynchronous messaging. That's the focus of our session today. So as a solutions architect, when we talk to our customers and discuss communication patterns between their microservices, we often hear they have REST APIs on their radar, but not necessarily asynchronous messaging. So we strongly suggest our customers to look at asynchronous messaging when it comes to microservices, as it has a number of architectural advantages to help you scale, evolve, and operate your microservices independently. So some of you might be thinking, why should integration patterns be only applicable to microservices? Shouldn't the patterns be relevant to all kinds of architecture? Actually, the session title could also be application integration patterns, not only for microservices. But as I pointed out before, when it comes to microservices, architectural benefits of using async messaging becomes even more prominent. So let's look at the agenda for today. We will talk a bit about need for messaging and potential drawbacks of synchronous systems. Then we will discuss popular integration patterns, mostly involving asynchronous messaging. And lastly, to put some flesh to the bone, we will be discussing some relevant use cases where you will apply these patterns. So this is my favorite part of the session. We will be wearing a CTO's hat for a fictional startup and implement some of their use cases. It will be extremely fun and entertaining, so please hang tight. Now let's talk a bit about why do we need messaging in general. So if your application is cloud native or large scale or distributed and doesn't include any messaging component, that's probably a bug. Let's see why. So there are many potential drawbacks of synchronous systems. They come with inherent coupling and they have tight dependencies. So let's say if one of the dependency fails, all the upstream callers usually get impacted as everything is tightly coupled. For example, you may still want to accept orders from your customers even if other unrelated system is down. This is difficult with synchronous systems. Also with synchronous systems, usually there is no segregation of functionalities. If something goes wrong, the entire system can be impacted. So to bring everybody on the same page, we will discuss some fundamental application patterns based on messaging. So we all know patterns are really a great means for architects, but not only for architects, to discuss things because they provide a lingua franca. So everybody knows what other is talking about. So we will start with the most fundamental pattern, which is message exchange. Fundamentally, there are two ways you can exchange messages between systems. First is one way and second is request response. So with one way, you have a sender and a receiver and a message channel in between. So we can immediately see the message channel decouples sender and receiver. They don't have to know and they don't know about each other. So sender does not expect any response from the receiver in this case. We can further distinguish one way into synchronous and fire and forget. So now you may be thinking, why synchronous if we are not expecting any response? Well, the synchronous communication is between sender and message channel for acknowledgement. So if the sender is not interested in getting an acknowledgement from message channel, that's fire and forget. Now on the other hand, we have request response. So here we have additional response channel for the responder. So this might raise two questions to you. First is, how does a responder know where to send a response? For that, we have return address pattern. So what sender does, it injects a piece of meta information into the message and responder can extract it and derive from there what the return channel is. Second question you might raise, how does a requester know in case of multiple responses that they are for the same request? Let's say for aggregation purpose. So for this, we have correlation ID pattern. Again, it's a piece of meta information that the requester can inject in the message, and the responder is asked to forward this correlation ID into the response message. Now let's understand the message channels better. What are these? So we will distinguish between point-to-point and publish-subscribe channels. So point-to-point channels are implemented as queues and publish-subscribe as topics. So the semantics of queue are every message delivered to it is received by only one receiver. So you can have multiple receivers and queue will distribute the messages automatically across them. So this comes with two really powerful advantages. The first one is scale out on consumer side. That means if there is a lot of traffic on the queue and existing processes are not simply capable of processing this load, then you can add more processes and queue will distribute the load to the additional ones that you add. In that sense, the queue acts as a load balancer. As messages are also buffered at the queue, you can also call it a buffering load balancer. That brings to the second advantage. Queues can flatten the peak loads for you. So as it buffers messages, even if you don't have enough receivers that can immediately process all the messages, you can process the messages at your own pace. So let's say maybe you don't want to scale out and save money by not running so much compute on receiver side. Now let's look at semantics of topic. Here every message is delivered to every subscriber. Receiver is called subscriber now. Think of it as a broadcast. Everyone gets everything as long as they are subscribed. So if you look at the case we discussed previously, if there is a lot of traffic on the topic, then you simply can't scale out by adding more subscribers, as any additional subscribers will also receive all the messages. So that doesn't help you in scaling with topics. So we can park this problem for now. We will come to composite patterns soon, and that will solve it. Another thing to note in case of topic is topic messages are not persistent by default, but you can apply durable subscriber pattern with SQS SNS chaining to persist it. Since now you know the concepts, you might ask, how do I actually implement microservices with messaging for my cloud native workloads? So we have Amazon SQS, which is Simple Queue Service, and SNS, which is Simple Notification Service. Both are cloud native and serverless services, which means there's no infrastructure for you to manage. So SQS is for point-to-point and SNS is for publish-subscribe scenarios. You can just consume these services through simple APIs. But some of you might also have requirements to support industry standard messaging protocols like JMS, AMQP, maybe for legacy workload scenarios or lift and shift scenarios. Then you can use Amazon MQ, which is a managed ActiveMQ broker. Now let's look at some composite patterns built with the combination of fundamental ones we have seen so far. So topic queue chaining is the solution to the problem we parked before when we wanted to scale out on the topic subscriber side. Let's see how it works. So we have a publisher that publishes message on a topic. Now we don't attach subscriber directly to topic, but we put queue in between. With that, we can have best of both the worlds. So we can have fan out functionality, and at the same time we also have consumer scalability. And also, since queue persists and buffers messages, if there's an outage on one of the receiver, the messages will not be lost. Now speaking of outages, everything fails all the time. That's a famous quote from Werner Vogels, who's the Amazon CTO. So no matter how perfect your architecture is, we need to handle failures. So dead letter queues can help you investigate and handle failures when it comes to messaging. Let's assume a scenario. So message is delivered to a queue and receiver throws an exception while processing it. Message is sent back to the queue now. Message is again delivered to receiver again, exception occurs, message is sent back to the queue, and so on. So now this process is stuck in a loop. Such a message is also called a poison pill, although it doesn't need to be something necessarily malicious. It can also be certain edge case scenario you haven't handled in the receiver. So now you don't actually want to operate an open heart surgery in production, but would like to take this message out of production and investigate without taking your systems down. So for that we have dead letter queues. You can configure on your messaging channel after how many undelivered attempts you want to deliver messages in dead letter queues. Now you can investigate the reason for failure and later put the message back in queue if needed. So SQS, Lambda, SNS all support dead letter queue pattern. One thing to note about SQS standard queues, it does not guarantee order of messages, so it provides best effort ordering. But sometimes you might have a scenario wherein you really need to ensure that message order is preserved. For example, processing payment before allowing a customer to place an order. So for that we have another type of SQS queue, FIFO queues, first in, first out. Message order is preserved. So if you have to preserve order, it will probably not work in a multi-threaded environment. So you might have to pay for it with limited throughput. So if you compare the throughput of Amazon SQS standard queues and FIFO queues have dramatically less throughput. And it's the same for any other messaging or streaming technology when you want FIFO behavior. The reason for that is because at some time you have to have single thread working on some tasks. But it also has another interesting aspect. You can't have more than one receiver when message order is desired. Because if you have multiple receivers that act concurrently on incoming messages, you can't guarantee on your end that you preserve the message order, as message processing probably is not taking same amount of time for each message. So what can we do with FIFO queues to still have a bit of scalability on our receiver side? So we can use message group pattern. So messages that belong to the same message group are always processed one by one in a strict relative order to the message group. Messages that belong to different message groups might be processed out of order. So let's look at the diagram. We have three distinct groups: blue for message A and C, yellow for message B, and pink for message D. So message A is delivered to one receiver, message B to another, message B is consumed. Now as per the order of the messages, message C should be delivered, right? Well, not with message groups. SQS in this case would park the message with same group as long as another message in the same group is in flight. In this case, A is still under process. So instead, the next message, which is message D, is delivered. Message D is consumed now. Eventually, message A is also done. And now it's just a matter of concurrency. Any of the available receiver are eligible to get message C. In this case, it goes to the one at the bottom. So this is how you can scale your receivers using FIFO queues. You should also understand message delivery QoS, which is quality of service, before architecting your application. So now QoS is an agreement between sender and receiver that defines the guarantee of delivery for a specific message. So there are three QoS types: at least once delivery, at most once delivery, and exactly once delivery. So SQS standard queues support at least once delivery. Occasionally, more than one copy of message might still be delivered, while our SQS FIFO queues support exactly once processing. So in this case, message is delivered once and remains available until consumer processes it. But there are some challenges when it comes to exactly once delivery. As a matter of fact, you can hardly ever guarantee this because of yourself. Remember, everything fails all the time. So imagine your receiver code runs into an exception, but the message has already been delivered once to this receiver. Maybe this receiver has only processed 50% of the actual work that needs to be done, and you actually now want to process 100% of the work that's supposed to be done. So you want the queue to deliver this message again. Now it's delivered second time, so not exactly once. As a rule of thumb, if you really want to run messaging at high scale, it can only be at least once delivery. So you should design your systems to handle duplicates and process messages in idempotent manner. Let's look at other helpful patterns. Message filter. So we said for topic messages, every subscriber will get every message. But there might be cases where certain subscribers are only interested in certain subset of your messages. Here, every subscriber can autonomously tell the topic, hey, I'm only interested in blue message or yellow message. Again, the publisher remains completely unaware of subscribers. There's another way to implement this without messaging, which is recipient list pattern. So recipient list is nothing but an additional piece of code that knows which subscriber is interested in which messages. This means more code and infrastructure for you to maintain. It also introduces additional coupling. So message filter is definitely a better option to choose in this case. Final pattern we'll discuss today is Saga orchestration. So what's a Saga? It's a sequence of local transactions. Each service in a Saga performs its own transaction and publishes an event. The other service listens to that event and performs the next local transaction without tight coupling. Everything event driven. Let's see how it works. So we have event source and result target. Now we need to perform multiple transformations in between. So at the heart of this pattern is a component called orchestrator. In this pattern, we externalize the knowledge of processing steps into the orchestrator. Orchestrator can do all the heavy lifting for you, creating a workflow. Participants remain as loosely coupled as possible. Orchestrator will allow you to implement traditional workflow capabilities like branching, retry scenarios, and parallel processing. If you want to make use of this pattern, you should look at AWS Step Functions. AWS Step Functions is a serverless and cloud-native service that implements state machines for you that you can use to apply Saga pattern. So you can define your state machines in a JSON document or even paint them graphically in AWS console. Alright, now as you have learned all the important patterns, it's time to look at some relevant use cases to apply them. This is the fun part I promised. We will be designing few solutions for a fictional startup, Wild Rides Inc. So Wild Rides is disrupting transportation by replacing traditional cabs by unicorns. It's a unicorn ride-hailing app. Why? Because it's much more fun and interesting to ride a unicorn than cabs. Wild Rides has a massive microservices architecture and a number of really interesting use cases. Let's see. The first one is submit a ride completion. Now imagine you booked a unicorn ride back to your hotel. After reaching your destination, now the unicorn wants to send this ride completion information to the Wild Rides systems and maybe charge you some Bitcoin. So the unicorn uses the Wild Rides Unicorn app. The app communicates to backend via REST APIs. The Unicorn Management Services receives this request. First thing it does is stores this payload in a rides database. At this point, it can respond to the app saying the request has been received. Now this is where it gets interesting. There can be a number of other microservices who might be interested in a ride completion event. For example, customer accounting service for payments, or a loyalty service to credit loyalty points, and of course a data lake ingestion service, because everyone has a data lake these days. We also have a special service called Extraordinary Ride Service, who's only interested in rides beyond a certain fare and distance threshold. Now the problem statement we have is, think about how do we integrate all these services? Well, you could say, since we have already stored the data in the database, why don't we make the ride store available to all other services? Well, it could work, but it may not be the best architecture design. We would tightly couple all our microservices on right hand side to the DB schema. So imagine any changes in the DB would directly affect every other service. We definitely don't want to do this. Another approach to do it can be integration via REST APIs. So REST APIs are great, we all love them. Well, though it's an absolutely valued approach, but it might come with some cost. Let's see how. We now have REST APIs on all those services, so Unicorn Management Service somehow need to send HTTP requests to them. But to do this, it has to know where to send them. So we would have again recipient list pattern. Also, we might keep on adding and removing multiple microservices with auto-scaling, so this endpoints changes dynamically. We could externalize this knowledge in a request distribution service, additional code, additional infrastructure to maintain. We will also have to implement the filter for extraordinary ride service. This can easily introduce a bunch of if and else's in your distribution service, something that we could potentially avoid. Well, the best way to implement this scenario would be with messaging. We could simply put the message in the ride completion SNS topic and all interested microservices can subscribe to it. Classic publish subscribe scenario. We can also make use of SNS message filter functionality. So the extraordinary ride service can subscribe with the desired filter policy and it will only receive the interested messages. Now, if we also want to become resilient to outages on microservices side, we could put queues in between and implement topic queue chaining. This will ensure no message loss and will also introduce scalability on microservices side. Now, this would be a good architecture for a use case. Let's look at the next one, pre-booking campaigns. So now WildRides are running a marketing campaign with discounts to pre-book rides for next week or even next month. So customers can submit the pre-booking request via the WildRides customer app. It's received by the ride booking service at the backend. Again, the service persists the data in pre-booking database and responds back to the client. Now this campaign is hugely successful. We are seeing a surge of booking requests, millions of it, leading to additional load on our ride booking service. The problem statement we have is, what can we do to process this surge without losing any of the orders? Not a single one. So one approach is to put a SQS queue in front of booking service and letting your mobile app talk to it. So we can send a response back to the mobile app as soon as the message hits the queue. So remember, it's crucial for customer experience that we accept the request, but it's absolutely acceptable if we work on it few seconds later. So SQS in this case will flatten the peak for your pre-booking service and you can consume it afterwards. Now we need to actually process the request. Our pre-booking service takes the incoming payload and forwards it to the SNS topic. The topic can then be chained to multiple queues, via which the message will be consumed by specific service for further processing. Once the booking is processed, we can send a notification to customers saying ride has been confirmed. So now this decoupled architecture will provide a good customer experience by scaling for peak loads. Now the last use case for today is fare collection. So in first use case, submit a ride completion, we ended up with this architecture. So Unicorn submits a ride completion event and multiple microservices work on it independently. That was a problem statement. Now we will look deeper into the customer accounting service. So this service makes sure we charge the customer for the ride. As you know, payment charging usually is a multi-step process. It also involves maintaining states across these steps. Hence we will use Saga orchestration here and use AWS step functions. Let's say the first step is credit card pre-authorization. On the right hand side, you see the fraction of the flow with AWS step function. The branch notifies failure in case the pre-auth fails. So if pre-auth is successful, we will charge the card using the pre-auth code. And if the payment is successful, we will invoke the customer accounting service to update the payment information and successfully notify the customer. So by using a state machine and also having branches for sunny and rainy cases, that is success and failure scenarios, we can treat this series of 3 discrete steps as one distributed transaction and ensure that our systems remain in a consistent state. So it's a very powerful pattern when consistent state is essential. As you can see, you can model the state machine and branching logic graphically with ease using AWS step functions. We have come to an end. If you are interested in this topic and want to learn more, you can follow this link to AWS Compute blog with all posts with tag messaging. And if you'll have to take one thing away from this session, please remember loose coupling is better than lousy coupling. As always, we really appreciate your feedback so that we can better understand the topics you would be interested in. So please let us know what you think. Thank you for joining us today and hope you enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.